My name is Michael Grant. I am the author of Warbirds, How They Played the Game. When Abilene was named the team of the century in 1999, I decided to write a book. I realized most people remembered very little about those teams. Most people, even Abilenians, even me, didn't remember much about those teams that made this colossal history. They remembered the Breckenridge game. They remembered Twyman's catch in the 1954 championship game. They remembered the Tyler game. They remembered Gregory and Carpenter. They remembered the game Hayseed broke his leg. They remembered the Corpus Ray game. They remembered the Amarillo game in 1957, and they remembered the Highland Park game the week after. And of course they remembered the 49-game winning streak. But that was all. So I was going to write a history book, restoring those lost details that the Texas high school football team of the century deserved. So I started. X's and O's about the Borger game, 34-7, October 8th, 1954. First win in the streak. Odessa, number 2 in the streak, 21-7. Pampa, number 3, Amarillo, number 4, on and on. But about a quarter of the way in, something started to happen. The story started to rise above X's and O's, or the X's and O's started to change. Abilene's X's and O's began to look different than anybody else's. It started to happen in the last 4 games of 1953. The streak had not started, but the X's and O's had started to earn regard. What coaches around the district saw was what the Eagles did in the last 4 games of the season. They had outscored 4 tough District 1-4A opponents, 160-20. Coaches throughout the district sensed something starting to happen, starting to stir in Abilene. Things were stirring and growing. In 1954, I could watch the regard grow as Abilene moved toward the state championship. Then, early in 1955, something else happened. Abilene, ranked number 1, played 4th-ranked Odessa. It was the biggest game in the state that night, October 14th, 1955. Odessa fans chartered a 22-car train to bring fans to Abilene. At the stadium, something happened that was almost impossible to believe. Abilene beat the Broncos 47-0. Across Texas that night and the next morning, the Eagles earned something that not even a state championship and a winning streak could provide. When they beat Odessa 47-0, the Eagles acquired an aura. I had to go back to my English classes. We all learned superlatives in English class: good, better, best. Regard was good, but an aura, a spiritual respect, was better. Now the Eagles had this aura and this spiritual respect. It changed things. The Pampa Scouts who came out of the press box that night were not the same men who went in 3 hours earlier. In the press box, scouts for the Pampa Harvesters gathered up their papers and headed down the stadium steps to the parking lot. Nobody interviewed them. It would have been interesting to hear what they had to say. In Pampa, the coaches and players had a week to think about the information the Harvester Scouts brought back from the Abilene-Odessa game. It took only 4 plays to convince them the Scouts hadn't made any of it up. Of the Eagles' first 4 plays from scrimmage, 3 went for touchdowns. So the Eagles charged forward in 1955, building on regard and now something even better, respect. Mosher liked respect for his team as long as the boys remembered it started with regard. When he was unhappy, a look came onto Mosher's face that was not anger or disappointment, but sort of a facial shrug, an ultimatum. It said, if you don't do this thing, then that thing will happen. The Eagles knew what it meant. Mosier was going to make sure they did this so that didn't happen. And this always meant fundamentals. We worked hard on fundamentals this week, Mosier told the Reporter News, in what the players would call classic understatement. After Odessa, the Eagles started doing crazy things. The Reporter News warned that Lubbock was going to be another tough cookie. The score in Lubbock that Saturday, 62-7. In their next 3 games, they outscored their opposition 124-13. Then the state semifinals, Abilene 33, Dallas Sunset 6. Sunset coach Byron Rome was asked about the game's turning point. He said, when we walked on the field, I guess, regard and respect. Then I got to the Tyler game number 23 in the streak, state championship, Amon Carter Stadium, December 17th, 1955. Opening kickoff, Gregory almost fumbled and went down at the 5, not looking good. 3 minutes later, Abilene scored. On either side of the field, people didn't quite know what to think. After a nerve-rattling start, the Eagles had moved 95 yards in 8 plays, all of them rushes inside the tackles, and they did it in 3 minutes and 7 seconds against the unbeaten Tyler Lions, who had allowed only 1 touchdown in the playoffs and only 87 points all season. On the field, the Lion players were shocked. Charlie Milstead, their All-State quarterback and safety, said they were twice as good as we thought they were. By the 4th quarter, the score was 33-0. Tyler had managed 2 first downs. After the game, a young Tyler boy approached Milstead for his autograph. Milstead told him he should go get Abilene players to sign. We could play Abilene every day in the week and never beat them. So there was the superlative, reverence, good, better, best, regard, respect, and now reverence. Expert witnesses to the Tyler game knew they had seen something climactic. Waco coach Carl Price said, Abilene state champions this year are 30 points better than the 1954 champions. If they improve another 30 points next year, they might as well get in the Southwest Conference. He had the right idea, but Tyler sports writer Hunter Schmidt kicked it up a notch. He said, I'd give anyone Notre Dame and 14 points against Abilene. The 1956 Eagles opened against San Antonio Edison. Score, 41-6. After the game, Chuck Mosier said, you know, last year there wasn't anybody our second-string kids could move against. So it had come to this. Talking about Abilene's first-team offense had essentially become pointless. In comparing the Eagles with their opposition, it was more relevant to talk about the second team. Mosier would never say it, but it was reasonable to suppose that the Eagles' second team might finish 3rd in the district, behind San Angelo and, of course, the Eagles' first team. As for the first team in 1956, if they played the whole game without subs coming in every week, apparently they had the potential to outscore any opponent 69-4. Granted, there was a pointlessness to this kind of doodling, like wondering how many 1956 Cadillacs Elvis Presley could buy. But Carl Price had been wondering about potential. Obviously, the 1956 Eagles were potential being realized. It was the first Eagle team to represent the coach's complete design for a winning program. When Mosier came to Abilene in 1953, these players were 9th graders in junior high, where Mosier's program really began. It's not difficult to imagine coaches watching Abilene game films, their pencils at some point coming to rest and silent, subjective minutes passing while they simply sat and watched how the Eagles played the game. So Abilene beat Ray, their third straight state championship. Then in 1957, they finally ran into a team which could beat the 1956 Eagles. That team was the 1957 Abilene Eagles. It happened in Amarillo, Dick Bivens Stadium, December 7th, 1957, state quarterfinals. God himself believed Amarillo would beat Abilene, and so in the morning hours he stirred his finger in the winds over Kansas and Nebraska to bring this big valedictory cloud headed southward to arrive just at the moment of the Sandys' victory. And just as the game ended with theatrical timing, it hit. A howling dust storm engulfed the stadium of the Amarillo Golden Sandstorms. Only the wrong team won. Abilene 33, Amarillo 14. The valediction belonged to the 1957 Abilene Eagles. Moser said, "I'll tell you the truth, I didn't think you could do it." Fort Worth Paschal coach Bill Allen said, "That ball club is a tribute to the greatest coach in the history of Texas high school football." The Eagles had beaten the Sandys team that had been directly compared to the 56 Eagles, and they had beaten them badly. Pound for pound and heart for heart, the 1957 Eagles were arguably the best team of them all. Tyler in 1955 might have been the best, but the greatest game anyone had ever seen the Eagles play was this one, the 49th straight. So now my work was done. I knew what kind of book I was going to write. I went back to the introduction and wrote, "This book is about that coach and that team, and the reason for the book is their winning streak. But its content is about how they played the game." So I wrote the book, and sure enough, it took me to the conclusion that I thought it would. Some of the players still have pages from that blue ink ditto machine. They have clippings too, so they want to know always what the scores were. But they've also kept the pages of rules and policies. It's how they played the game. Invariably, they will say they have lived their lives that way, and a feeling emerges among the players, but also among Abilenians of that generation. It's a feeling of being different from people their age who grew up in other cities. They saw for almost 4 years, almost the length of an entire high school education, what can happen when you live by the rules, know all the plays, and run till the whistle blows. Now they wonder if that message was so strong that they carried it with them, part of their education not available to others. They wonder aloud if their lives have been different because of a football team, the Abilene High School Eagles, 1954 to 57. Chuck Moser, coach, educator, Hall of Famer. Thank you.